Great. Thanks. Welcome all to the Governance Committee of the Mansfield Downtown Partnership. Was there order? Is there any public comments at the end submitted to the committee?
No public comment submitted.
I seek a motion to.
So moved to approve the January 23rd minutes of the Governance Committee.
Thank you. Second from Kyle. Any discussion? No. In that case, I'll.
Oh, I had one small correction.
Yes.
Under general description in the second paragraph, I believe it should say has instead of have. That first sentence.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
I'm under general description in the second paragraph. It says the work requires that the employee has demonstrated knowledge. I think instead of have.
Oh, you're on the job description.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we're doing the minutes, Betsy.
Never mind.
No,
Hold
remember.
that thought.
Hold
Thought
that.
it was
Yeah,
the minutes.
pause on that piece, but I appreciate your jumping
I
on that.
apologize.
Not well. Your response, all those in favor of the minutes as drafted? Sean, Kyle, you guys okay with it?
Yep.
All approved. I do want to make note that I think this is for the record. Josh makes me sound much better in print than I do in person. So he does a really good job, and appreciate the work that's done to document these the committee work, as it provides an important record for us to be able to lean back on and see the actions that we've taken in the past. We have a long agenda, but some of these things go really quickly, and I really want to spend the meat of our time talking about really it's the assessment of the board, sort of like an overview, and talk to us our newer members, and just try to get feedback as part of our role as a governance committee. But let's just run through these things in order, and some of the things Cynthia and I have kept on the agenda because we just don't want to. We want to keep the discussion going on some of these. One was the update on bylaws, and this is an important role for our committee, is to review our bylaws and keep them up to date. And at the last meeting of the full board, Betsy, there was some discussion about the bylaws, but Cynthia, did you have anything that we needed to follow up on specifically at this point?
Well, I think I had suggested to Frank that we didn't have anything really significant to change. We just changed the bylaws last year. That's a process. So given that and the fact that we're short-staffed, I thought what I will do is follow up with John Zaccaro, our attorney, on that language that is a little consistent / confusing on board terms, particularly for the appointed folks. So that's on my radar to follow up on. But at this point, we were not suggesting that we go to the full membership with any changes in bylaws this year.
Are you okay with that? I mean, that something could certainly come up and we're like, oh yeah, we do have to change it. But I think as we're looking at it now, we'll continue to monitor it. But bylaws are typically quite stable, and these are really, really well done. So I feel like every other year, if we bring changes, that might be sufficient. Last year was an exception because we were adding another student position, which I thought was a great recommendation that came out of this committee to increase that student voice. So it's on. I'd like to just leave it on our agenda for future meetings too, just in case review. If anybody has some thoughts that they've or topics that you feel like we should discuss a little bit more in depth related to the bylaws, let's do that. Okay. Next thing is review board member positions, and this is another sort of standing item in the second half of the year as you approach the the annual meeting and you're thinking about appointments and stuff, we want to make sure that we're attentive to these. And Cynthia, you had some correspondence with Colby, and he has a new opportunity coming up. Do you want to describe that, just to summarize his study abroad?
Sure, yeah. So Colby will be studying abroad from August to December. So his fall semester, and then he graduates, with his master's in education in May of 2024. So I think one piece is, does he sort of take a leave from the board for a couple of months, or do we start, looking for somebody to replace him this April, May? So he would be on, probably through, let's see, we don't have a July meeting. So whether, I'm not sure if he'll be on the August meeting, I don't know when he actually flies out, but
Where is he going?
he's going to London.
What's the committee's thoughts on this?
So his term would, in the normal course of events, come to an end when?
So they're yearly, oh, go ahead, Frank.
Oh, I think they're usually a year. The student appointments are a year, so they would, but there's an option for renewal.
Okay,
Well, the question, so that's good point, Ron. The question is, do we renew? And they give an immediate leave of absence is essentially is the one option.
What is his term?
It's also the student ones, both the two student positions, they both have 1-year term.
Yeah,
Right.
going from
So they
when to
just need
when?
to be renewed. They would need to be renewed if they're going to be. So Colby will still be a student and will be returning back next year, but there's going to be a significant gap.
Right, but what I'm asking is, in what month are they appointed? What is their appointment date?
I believe at the annual meeting, right? So
All right. So
governance
that would be May,
recommendation to
and he's gonna,
at the
by
annual meeting.
June?
Yep.
June.
Okay. So he would be gone for the summer?
August until December, the UConn semester, so the end of August. But I don't know when he's actually
December.
going to go to England, but
Yeah,
the end of August through December.
and then,
Be back from January until May. And then he'd be presumably a teacher after that.
yeah,
What committee assignment does he have? Sorry, I don't know this. Is he on
This is,
finance?
he's on the festival committee.
I think that's a long time to be missing a student rep.
It is, we need that voice.
Yeah,
It's almost, I almost wish we had like an alternate. A good,
Well, the good thing is we do have Rachel in that second position. She has not gotten back to me whether she's going to stay on for another year, but hopefully she will.
yeah, we're gonna need to know quick because we'd have to get
Yeah.
these both posted if that were the case.
Yeah.
Anybody else have some thoughts here? I don't know, we've been doing some of these, at least our committee runs pretty well by Zoom. So I mean, there could be some participation. Or should we?
has he indicated that he has a strong desire to remain on the board, even participating by Zoom from London? Or has he said it really doesn't matter a whole lot to him?
He didn't, I'm trying to think of the time change, so it would probably 4 o'clock meeting would probably be 9 or 10 o'clock at night, right? There's 5 hour, 6 hour difference.
Yep.
I mean, he's only 20 something, so,
Have to be on the festival committee too.
but he might be out and about,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also, he really
Festival
wouldn't
would be
know,
later.
and he wouldn't know what was going on
Right,
within the town either, so.
yeah.
Has he been a good participant up till now?
Yeah, he's been really good. He's missed the last 2 festival meetings though, so Emily was gonna just check in with him. And see
Okay.
where he is. But he's volunteered for several of our events.
I think Cynthia, maybe you can, maybe circle back with him and get a sense for whether he intends to continue. In the meantime, let's look to add 1 or 2 other people to the festival committee. you know, being down Denise and then being down potentially another committee member, it's probably not the worst idea in the world to bolster that up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Kyle, because we also lost another person. So I know Emily had some people at the schools that she wanted to ask. So that reminds me, I need to circle back with her. So some people that she's worked with at the schools on puppetry stuff.
Who's chair of the committee now?
It's Emily.
That is Emily, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Emily Wicks from.
Oh, it is Emily. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this? As I don't like sharing too much of my opinion as chair of a group. I like to hear from everybody else, but my feeling is that we really need that student voice. At least I think I've heard from our board that we need a student voice, that we want to increase the student voice. And so to have half a year go by is too much.
I agree.
Yeah, I think, Frank, that is probably my only thought relative to the bylaws, is that I think what adding the second student for this year has at least crystallized for me is that we probably could benefit from a third or a fourth student voice. I don't necessarily think that that's something we need to tackle, you know, in this year's set of bylaws, and I think we should try to be creative about it, in terms of, you know, I know the recruitment process and the interview process and all that is, you know, was pretty labor intense and you know, so if hypothetically there were a student leadership position, whether it were at E.O. Smith High School or at UConn, that could also serve as a de facto member of the Mansfield Partnership Board of Directors, you know, I like that idea. I would want to be careful about it, in that we, you know, we're careful relative to this particular board to emphasize that it's not a political board. So I wouldn't want, for instance, to say that automatically, you know, a member of UConn student government would be on it, or that a member of E.O. Smith student government would be on it, because that doesn't make any sense for us to be putting student politicians on a non-political board. But I wonder, I don't know what, you know, maybe it's worth having a conversation with Rachel and Colby about what types of groups might be a good fit, or even, you know, checking with Kathleen, you know, to see, based on some of the groups that have, you know, been the best organizers or the best volunteers or that type of thing. So maybe, you know, maybe student activities at UConn, if we check with the folks that run SUBOG, maybe they have student leadership positions within the student event group that might be a natural fit. I don't know. Again, I think some more student voice though would be good. Add a little bit more diversity to what it is we're doing.
Cynthia?
Yeah, so maybe Kyle, this is what you were getting at. I mean, we do still have 2 open positions for our bylaws. That's a little bit of an easier lift because you're sort of targeting people versus going out and asking for a bunch of people to apply for the student position. It's just, yeah.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, you saying that we have students apply or run for those vacant positions?
We
For a
can do, there's
year.
nothing preventing us from doing that.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 3-year commitment. That's why we always did the students kind of on every year reassessing where they are. But if you wanted somebody on sooner rather than later and didn't want to change the bylaws, that's one way to do it.
Okay, I like that. It's good to know.
I mean, my time frame is, I just need to have this pretty much figured out by May 1st.
Charlie, sort of,
at the latest.
You know, the idea, it's very hard to be just a single student representative to a board like this, right? And I kind of liked having a little bit of a cohort here where we had Colby and Rachel together, and at least it's something, but I think you're right, you could add 3 or 4, and then they have some meaning, because it's very hard to get some traction as a student if you only have a 1-year appointment. And I think at some point we have to really have a conversation, like how do we have to orient them a little differently than some of our other board members, so that they can feel like they're effective, and maybe they gain some strength as a team, and are able to, you know, have a real impact on some of our events that we're doing, and encourage, you know, what we were looking for before, I think, was the you know, who are the networkers? And I think that's what you're saying. Are we reaching out to the right pockets and across the university or high school, and pulling in the right people that can help us really drive traffic? I think that'd be good. Betsy,
And these positions are 3-year positions?
we have 2 board positions that are the normal 3-year appointments.
Okay, so really what we should be looking for is sophomores. A kid who's had a year of high school to kind of get acclimated, but someone who could serve more than 1 year with the board. You know,
I think we have done that in the past. I mean, even last year we talked about, you know, those, but if you got a sophomore for the student spot and it's only a 1-year term, they're always available for renewal, right? Or, you know, the governance committee has that option to
Yeah.
renew their appointment.
because I'm trying to think of his name. What was the young man, Cynthia, that was so active on our board as a student?
For boss?
Yes. You know, he was on, I don't know how long he was on, but it was more than 1 year, right?
Yeah,
And he was good. I mean, he got involved.
Mhm.
And
but you know,
I think,
but it took time. Like the first year, it was a
Right.
lot different than his 3rd year.
yes, but that's what I'm saying. It's, you know, a kid needs to get used to the board. They need to get used to their high school first. Then they need to kind of get used to the board. And that's what that first year is. And then, you know, they by that time, they know where their interest is on the board and what
Yeah.
subcommittees they might want to serve on. So it just seems to me that if we're looking for students, sophomore or junior at the most would be the best choice rather than seniors.
Okay. Well, Cynthia, let's, on this point, let's think about this. Make sure we understand the timeline that you would need to advertise and promote, and then if I need to have a conversation, or Kyle and I need to have a conversation with Colby about still staying involved, but maybe taking this next year, perhaps him coming back and getting involved in the festival committee or some other type of volunteer activity of the second half of the year. That might be an option to free up that second student space, and hopefully Rachel is able to continue. She's made some progress. Great to have her still on board. Okay. All right. We'll come back to this item too, but let's get into the overview of the board assessment responses. And you know, as a governance committee, we're sort of responsible for our membership's involvement, and we're really the ones that are thinking about the health of the board. And I think we're very interested, although Kyle, you're going to present to the full board. It'd be great to have Steve and Betsy have a sense of what the response was too. So you have some thoughts of how that survey went?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. Part of what my normal job here is at UConn, I work with all the companies that create merchandise for UConn, and one of the things that we are pretty vigilant about requiring them to do is to have their factories audited, in countries like China and Vietnam and all around the world. And, but you have to be careful because you can have a little bit of audit fatigue, right? So there's hundreds of universities that are working with these companies. And then if we're all so we try to be collaborative and make sure that we're not overtaxing the companies and the factories in terms of audits. And I think what I would say about the board assessment as well as the executive director's assessment is I think with this particular group of individuals, we may have assessment fatigue because I wouldn't necessarily say that the efforts were that enthusiastic relative to the feedback provided. I think the themes relative to recruitment of board members, getting new people involved, making sure that we do what we can to create a little more of a diverse board makeup. Those were pretty common themes throughout. The reception to the level of engagement that we've had with the property owners and the fact that we've been having them to board meetings has been well received. I think Cynthia and I talk a lot about sort of a fine line between how broad we want board membership communicating with the property owners as opposed to maybe just Cynthia and myself. So maybe there's a little bit of in between with that, but I also think we have to be careful about, the fact that we have people on this board that are politicians. We have people on this board that are business owners. So again, I think we just have to continue to be careful in how we communicate with those property owners, and again, I think continue to build up some trust in the way in which we share information with them, they share information with us, and then I think over the last year the business owner socials I think were very well received, and again, just I keep coming back to the necessity for us to continue to communicate, continue to make sure that we are clear about what the goals and what our focus is. I think the strategic plan has I don't want to say muddied the water as far as that goes, but obviously I think there's a difference between what we're doing on a day-to-day basis as a board and the challenges that we're tackling in the downtown versus a strategic plan that you spend 9 to 12 months building out with an outside consultant and then look to implement over a period of time and fundraise to and look to have deliverables on the back end of it. So but I think that's sort of my general overview. As I said, the assessment, there were plenty of assessments that literally just checked the boxes, and then there were certainly some others that provided comments, so happy to dig in on any of those particular subjects. And I was also doing work today on the executive director's assessment, which we'll be covering in the executive committee on Thursday before the board meeting. So again, a lot of similar comments, relative to how the board operates.
Yeah. That's a good, your observation about the audit fatigue. And you're right. I think that's probably maybe the case in this instance. Coming out of COVID too. Interesting. With the strategic plan, I think we're looking at something that's much more, longer term, right? And you're sort of shifting focus from the immediate day to day, like who's taking over the space in Grill 86, and then shifting and then saying, well, what is this going to look like 5 years from now? We've asked the board to think of things differently this past year. Ron, you're on mute.
No, I'm fine. I was just,
Yeah. I do wonder why we're not getting a better, more committed response. I don't know. Kind of was hoping, but I also I'll freely admit, I did a little bit more than checking the box, but not much. Like I felt like some of my comments were repetitive from previous years. Like I didn't feel like I was adding anything new. I didn't have a new perspective. So that may have been part of it, and maybe I'm part of the problem.
I mean, I think, Frank, I think there are some new people that maybe don't think they've been involved enough to comment.
yeah,
I think there are other folks that have been around long enough that they feel like they've commented on the same thing over and over.
Right.
And I do think that part of it, and I don't mean for this to sound in any way as a negative. We meet all the time. We meet every month, and we've got 7 committees and working groups that are meeting all the time. I don't feel like there's a lot slipping through the cracks, so I think the idea that I think we have a group that is pretty well engaged in what is going on, and are there areas of focus that could shift from year to year, or from month to month, or from quarter to quarter? Sure. But I don't feel like if we were meeting quarterly and had I mean the frequency of meeting and the frequency with which we are dealing with all of this, I don't know how effective we could expect an assessment to be, because I think people are looking at it and they're saying, well, I just had a meeting last week and I have 2 more meetings next week, and what am I assessing again? Am I assessing the meeting I'm going to, or am I assessing, what we're, so, again, I don't say that to be critical. I say it to be almost actually a positive, in that the folks are in the moment. They really are engaged.
Yeah, we're more into, Ron, I'm going to come to you next, but to your point about meetings, like adding all the work groups off of strategic planning to, you're right, we have had more meetings. I feel in tune with what's going on. I'm feeling connected to all of you pretty well. So that is a point. Ron?
Actually, I was not planning to speak, but I would just want to say that in terms of my own participation, I wish, I don't know if it's it would have been something giving me greater depth had I been on the board during the period when the strategic action plan was developed and all the sub-plans therein. So now it's on me that I haven't delved as deeply as I could into some of that. And perhaps had I done so, I would have had more detailed comments.
That's a good point. Betsy?
For me, during COVID, I pretty much stayed home. And when I was doing that assessment, I hadn't spent much time up in the downtown area at all. And so I think that I think that inhibited me a little in filling out that, and I don't know whether other people, had the same experience or not, but, now that COVID hopefully is disappearing, maybe I'll get up there more often and, walk around more often and go into the businesses more often, the restaurants.
And
But I really
participating
hadn't
in
done
our
that for,
events. Yeah,
pardon me,
and participating in events, right?
and participating, which I haven't done
Yeah.
that either.
right?
Yeah,
So that's a.
probably because I'm old.
No, you're being smart, and maybe. it
They
was
say
good for
you're a
you.
high risk when you're old, so I had to listen.
But it's a good point, Ron too, that when you do a strategic plan or something and you have turnover in your board, the new board members are adopting the fun and exciting, the idea part from somebody else and are then charged with the implementation of that. And I think we need to give good, as part of orientation, I think for new board members as they come on, so sort of get them more involved and more committed to what we're trying to achieve in the strategic plan, because the rest of us, I think, who participated in its development have a natural wanting to see it fulfilled because, we invested in the upfront. But that's a different approach for you. And the students too, right? The students are going to be adopting the strategic plan implementation, because we're sort of shifting to that implementation more in this coming year. We have been this year. I don't know, Steve, I don't want to miss you or Sean or Cynthia, if you guys have some thoughts on this. Is this is somewhat typical of a response, and can't remember, Kyle, would you say it's less of a response or than your previous year? And
I mean, I think in terms of people that responded, it was, I think almost 100%. I think there might have been one person that didn't reply, but no, I did think that, but well, and I have to say, and Cynthia and I talked about this the other day, we did this about 6 weeks later last year, and that was based on, I think that was based a little bit on my travel schedule at the time. So the fact that both of them are were hitting as due at the same time, again, probably adding to the assessment fatigue a little bit.
that's a good point, timing wise, too.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? Steve?
Frank, we might consider delaying or not having the board assessment responses occur on an annual basis. Perhaps it could be done every other year.
What does the committee feel about that? I mean, there's nothing, we're not, we don't have this as a formal charge. We're doing this to ourselves. And we said that this was an important exercise for our committee and for the board. Betsy, your thoughts?
What are the average, I should know all this, but I'm blank, okay? What are the average terms for a board member? Is it annual? Is it biannual? Do they serve 2 years, 1 year?
3 year, the elected.
3, right?
3, right? So,
3-year with the option to do another 3 years, so capped at 6 years in a row. You could come back if you go off for a year,
Yeah,
and
okay,
the appointed ones can go into perpetuity.
okay. So I don't think it would be a problem to do it every other year. Because you'll have the majority of the people on the board will be there for 2 years. Because the terms don't all end at the same time.
all right,
And
right.
maybe more effective that way.
Yeah, right. Maybe that encourages people to be more thoughtful because
Yeah.
they're, yeah. Ron, I'm interested in your perspective as a new board member. What would you?
2 years would be fine. I was wondering if there's any possibility of, instead of having a written instrument, having little groups of 3 members, 3 board members, 3, get together and just discuss some of these things.
Yeah. In that way, you sort of play off each other, right?
Yeah.
It triggers other thoughts.
Mhm.
You know, it's a little tougher to quantify, but I don't know that we need to have a survey, you know, to say we averaged 4.3 on
Yeah.
the scale. I don't know that you're, especially I think Kyle, the way you synthesize things, you may actually benefit more from conversation. In fact, that's sort of, Ron, what we're one of the things on our agenda, number 8, is check in with new board members.
Yeah.
That's in some ways, that's a little bit.
Yeah.
We're assessing this all the time and how people are doing, what their experience has been. So I think that's a good option too. Steve, did you, when you were as president, your experiences, did you find that there were times that we used the survey to take action, or that it's an important part of our annual, or how, I'm just kind of curious as to how you used it as a president.
Well, first of all, the audit fatigue, if we want to call it that, has existed from day one, as far as I can recall. There was never enthusiastic response by all the board members to filling out the form. And that is true during the 4 years that I was president, but it was also true prior to that when I was vice president. So it's not something that's new. I do like Ron's suggestion. However, I think it would have to be incorporated into a regular board meeting, because that's the only time that you're likely to have a great number of board members present together at one time. But I see nothing wrong with incorporating Ron's suggestion with my suggestion and devoting a fairly significant portion of a board meeting to breaking out the board members into groups of 3 or 4 and giving them 15 minutes to discuss what the board assessment is trying to get at, and then come back as a full board and talk about what their little group had to or came up with. So perhaps what we need to do is to change the process in a manner like Ron suggests and see if that works better.
Yep. And so maybe like have a 1-page sheet that sort of guides the topics that need to be covered, and maybe they can match up a staff member with the 2 or 3 groups, however we break into. And things could be submitted, you know, either discussed, but if you wanted to submit something on the side in writing, you could too. I like this. I think it sounds like a good solution, sort of a combination of those two. And going to doing this every other year is like a formal exercise. Would be good. Is that accepted as a friendly amendment then? Ron and Steve, I think I like the combination of the two. Yeah. Cynthia, maybe this is something that we can work on, and maybe you can circle back with Ron and Steve, you know, if we put something out. But Kyle, you're good with this then, as president say, hey, let's go every other year. So maybe give a report. Maybe, you know, next year we could be designing the survey for the following year, and sort of what that process would look like. Great. That's a good conclusion. Well, thank you, Kyle. Is there anything we missed or we'll hear?
No, I think all good. And frankly, I can share out with the group on Thursday, the thought process relative to, to a potential shift going forward.
Great. And, Ron and Sean and Cynthia will be there too. I'll be there to back that up, that's our direction. Great, thank you. Number 7, Betsy, you're up. We're reviewing the job description for the executive director. You're on mute. Beth.
You want me to correct my screw up, right? Okay, under job description.
Yep.
Under general description, second paragraph says the work requires that the employee have, and it should be has, I believe.
I'll take that. So this was brought before the board at the last time, at our last meeting, and the comment was to bring it more, make it more action oriented. And I thought the suggestions that were added, Kara did a great job. I'm glad that she rolled up her sleeves and looked at that. So I like some of the suggestions. But now, Cynthia, this is both the suggestions that you would work on and then also Kara's.
Yeah, so they're all showing up in red. So Kara kind of did, she actually did edit the first page, and then I went from there using some of her actions. So she had also sent me an email with some action verbs that were more at the level of an executive director.
Mhm.
So that's how the process went.
It looks good. No, I went through it. Looks pretty good. Anybody else have some comments having reviewed this? And Cynthia, you're feeling comfortable with this description as accurate to your actual work that you're doing?
Yeah, I do. The thing with job descriptions, you don't want to get too much in the weeds, probably a little more in the weeds than some would like, but I think it's good. I think, I would suggest, I don't have it on the board agenda for Thursday, since I wasn't sure where we would be and already sent the packet out, but I can put it on the April agenda.
That's fine.
Is there anything specific that you do that we totally missed?
I don't think so.
Good. Because I know your job has a lot of different groups
Multifaceted.
that most of us don't even know about. So,
You mean picking the dead flowers out of the
Yeah.
pictures?
yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Uh-huh.
I decided not to put that in there.
I also like to look at the whole thing, understand what the goals are as well as the job description, so that you're seeing, all right, these are the responsibilities and this is what we've set as the priority for us. And I have compared it to what you've had in the past for goals, and it seems consistent, so I appreciate the input. And this hasn't been reviewed since 2017, so the world has changed since 2017. I'm glad we're able to update this now. Are there any other changes or adaptations to this job description? No. Cynthia, I think you can say that by consensus we approve of this. I don't think we need a voting act. If you could put that on the next board meeting, that'd be April. Should be fine.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Check in with new board members. I'd asked, so we have four board members. I'd asked Rachel and Ron. Ron, this is sort of our, we started this a couple of years ago where we really wanted to make sure we were reaching out to all our new board members, and you just happen to be on the governance committee, so you're up first. And I guess we want to make sure that we're not missing something too. And from new eyes and your perspective coming in, it's helpful to look at our board and give us some criticism, some advice just specific to being a new board member.
Yeah, well, as I was saying earlier, my one lack on my part is a deep familiarity with the strategic action plan. I was kind of, Frank, as you know, present at the creation in the president's office, so I knew the partnership's history, but much took place from that point on, and I did not, and again, this is on me, as fully immerse myself in that as I might have, and that's something I would like to remedy. In terms of, it's been a learning experience about a lot of specific things, and getting a better understanding of the role of the partnership in coordination with both the university and the town. So I have nothing specific to add beyond that.
Excellent. And this is open up to the members of the committee here for ask you questions. I hope you don't mind, Ron.
Sure.
With, one area specifically was orientation. So, right, you had, and maybe that's partly, it's my fault too. I just sort of thought of you as, oh, you were here from the beginning, all about it, and sort of didn't take the extra time to sit with you and say, hey, here's what we've been doing the last couple of years, just so you feel up to speed. And I kind of missed that. I didn't even think, didn't occur to me. I just thought of you as a veteran who knew,
Sure.
knew what was
And
going
I had
on.
a very good and useful meeting with Cynthia, but sure, that can never be downplayed.
Do you feel that your time is well spent? Do you feel effective? Are these roles in which it's a meaningful volunteer role?
Can I say that there are things that have happened that would not have happened had I not been here? No. Can I say that I'd like to feel that in some way, little bits and pieces, hopefully more as time goes on, I've made some little contributions. This is the board itself and even this committee are fairly large enough groups that no one person can or should play a huge role that leaves others out.
Any other, Kyle?
Ron, I'm curious, and I promise this is not a loaded question. I have my opinion, but do you think the town council should be appointing town council members to the board, or should be appointing residents representing?
I really think it should be town council members because it's a vehicle of communication and it's also a kind of buy-in. Ideally, you'd have one person from each party. And if you get the right kind of people, that is a very productive thing. If you get let me just say that we have now people from both parties who are not wholly negative. And as long as that's the case, things might work well. Betsy knows about this far more than I do.
That's it.
Kyle, if I could just add to that. Now, I don't know what it's been like the last few years because I haven't been involved. But I know, and Steve, you can help me out here. I know we had a hard time sometimes getting council members to become board members. And then we had a couple of times where we had council members who were totally opposed to the partnership end up on the board. And that was not helpful. So I think that, if things have changed now and you've got people on the council who actively want to serve on the board, that's good.
Mhm.
But it hasn't always been that easy. Am I right, Steve?
Yeah, you're right. However, I think for the most part, it's been very helpful to have council members on the board.
Yeah, I think so.
There have been times when we've actually had some difficulty getting town council representation on the board.
Yep.
That doesn't seem to be an issue at the present time.
Good.
And it's very important that there be good communication between the partnership and the town council, and that is
Right.
facilitated by those members of the council who are our board members. So
And of
one
course,
thing
on a
I-
day, I'm sorry.
one thing that I might not endorse would be that the ability of the town to appoint members to the partnership board of directors not be exclusively town council members. Because I can think of some current board members who are not town council members who are very good board members.
Kyle, did we explore that enough? Did you have?
Yeah, again, I think, I'm finishing up my third year on the board. And I think, we've talked, there have been times where we've talked about, the fact that the role that this board plays, is not as a political board. I think it's important that, that those that are assigned to the board positions by, whether it's by the president of the university or by the town council, understand the role that they play on that board. And it isn't necessarily the equivalent to the role that they play, as a member of town council or as a member of, again. So I guess when I compare it and say that the university president has 3 appointees and does not appoint themselves or a member of their cabinet, at least hasn't recently, and I think from a town council standpoint, I just know that in some of the conversations that I've had with folks, I think we just want to make sure that there's a line in the sand between politics and Chamber of Commerce, I guess, is sort of that when we are out and about, we're board members, we're not, or when we're representing the Mansfield Downtown Partnership Board of Directors, that's what we are. We're at an event, we're a board member, we're not a town councilor, we're not an XYZ. We may fill that role also, but when we're representing the board, I think it's important that that there's that delineation. So, but I appreciate very much so the history of, and having had plenty of conversations with Cynthia and Ryan and Tony about the necessity, obviously, for the town council to support the partnership and the budget and all of those things and the role that it plays. I believe me, I understand.
Just one comment, Kyle, if I may.
Yeah.
Sometimes politics plays a subtle role because you'll have an issue in town that one side has a particular view on and the other side has a totally opposite view. And it's always important that the different views be a part of the delegation from the Mansfield Town Council or the town of Mansfield. Because otherwise you set yourself up for criticism from one party or the other, that it's biased, that it's this. It may not be true, but that's what happens.
This is a good discussion. I've felt my point has been more about being a nonprofit, right? And operating as a nonprofit. But you do have to have this structure that's has roots in the town process. I think that's why we have a governance committee like this that balances and has a lot of experience. And we're open about these types of issues. So because it's hard to balance. It's hard to give help for you as president, Kyle. I think that your role is really tough. You and Cynthia have a balancing act to do. And I think what you're bringing up is an important aspect of it. We're trying to be action oriented and get things done, but appreciate some of the political ties that we do have.
Yeah, because I mean, I think to that point, Frank, you know, relative to the partnership's role, and at least my view of sort of the protocol of it is, you know, if we have an issue or any issue in which Cynthia and I are trying to manage, and we feel as if there is a necessity for the town to be aware of it, then of course that does mean the town council. We start with the town manager, you know, and that's our pathway, right? I don't ever envision a time where we would be communicating directly, or, you know, communicating in a meeting and thinking that a town councilor would then be taking that back officially to a town council meeting. They certainly are privy to the information, but, you know, but in terms of how, you know, how we're navigating particular challenges that, you know, Ryan and or Tony are our day-to-day contacts with the town, and that's who we would be formally communicating or making requests, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So
And that's the way it should be.
for sure. Yep.
Just out of curiosity, can anybody recall any issue on which the partnership and the town council have been at odds? I cannot, but yeah, I haven't been here.
I think early on, when I was still mayor, there were a couple of times, and can I tell you what those issues were? No, but I remember trying to convince the council
Mhm.
to support something that the partnership wanted to see or wanted to oversee. But I can't tell you minute details about what it was.
And that was a different era too, when we were in the construction phase, right?
Yeah.
Which is very
Well, yeah,
different in phase
right.
we're in now, and that we're trying to implement with the strategic plan. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm mindful of our time. It's 4:58, and I really wanted to try to keep this to an hour. But I'm very grateful for your perspective, Ron. Thank you as a new member. This is very helpful feedback and having fresh eyes look at it. So it's part of our self-assessment, I think. And also appreciative of everyone who's been involved this past year or 2 or 3 during COVID too. I think this is a very meaningful board that is a place where people can plug in for civic engagement and feel like they can really be involved with the community and get some things done that's very visible and connect with other people. So I find that these roles are important, and we want to attract additional board members who share that same value. Thank you. The last item that really was updating strategic action plan work groups. Is there anything that we need to report on to this committee as a summary of what's been going on? Cynthia,
Sean, do you want to do a brief overview of our meeting with the landscape architecture students?
I mean, I think we already heard it in the board meeting.
Yeah, well, we met last week, right? So
Right.
Okay.
all right. Great. Nothing else. The next meeting, I think we're sticking with virtual. And our next board meeting, it's coming right up. So, anything else for this group before we adjourn? No. Thanks everyone for their
Thank you.
participation. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Betsy, Ron second, all in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your
Thanks, everybody.
participation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye now.